Hi there, my name is Lucas Fraser, and I'm the president of Connecting Environmental Professionals Ottawa. This is the recording of our September 29th, 2020 event, Developing a Career in Sustainability, a panel discussion from sustainability professionals. They talk about how they got started in their careers, some lessons they've learned, and what they recommend you do as you start your sustainability career search. I'm sure you're going to love it, and I look forward to seeing you at a future event.
So today we have a very exciting panel of expert environmental or sustainability professionals from the Ottawa region. And we are going to talk with them about their careers, how they got a start and how they built it, and the tips for others who are also looking to do the same. So let me start it by introducing our panelists. So today we have with us Stefanie Bowles, who's a senior project leader at Innovation Science Economic Development Canada. We'll go forward and call it ISED, with the Clean Growth and Clean Tech branch. Then we have Mesha, who's the head of grow operations at Limitless Farms. Mesha is also very passionate about sustainability in agriculture, and we'll hear about her passions and her journey. And finally, we have Ted Dillon, who's the CEO and founder of Fig Bites. And we'll hear from his deep experience in entrepreneurship in the sector, and all the tips that he can give to those of us looking to be on the same journey. So let's get this started. I'm sure everyone's very excited to hear from our panelists. So to start us off, I would like to ask the panel to talk about why they chose a career in sustainability. Why don't we start with you, Stefanie?
Sure. Thanks so much, Pallavi, for this invitation. I have a special place in my heart for connecting environmental professionals because I volunteered with you guys earlier in my career organizing events, and I was also in the executive for a while. And I think it was really, and sort of still is, one of those organizations where I actually feel like I belong in it and see myself really clearly and strongly in it. So I'm honored that you invited me to speak today. It's hard to believe I've been working already for 15 years. I don't know if you can see my gray hair, but it's been, 15 years. So I currently work at ISED in the Clean Tech and Clean Growth branch. Some of the files that I work on there, I support the Industry Strategy Council and the Clean Technology Economic Strategy Table. I work also on regulations and procurement for clean technology deployment. I work on the Departmental Sustainable Development Strategy for ISED and its portfolio, which is a very large sort of suite of organizations. And I also work on results, so planning and performance results. And that's a lot of my day. So it should be obvious, but I mean, this panel is about careers and sustainability, but I should just be very clear and transparent that the views that I express today are not the views of the Government of Canada. I am talking to you in my personal volunteer capacity, and so, you know, that should hopefully be clear. I chose a career in sustainability because it's what motivates me. I mean, it's always been what motivates me. It's this sort of existential threat of climate change has been burned into me since I was a young person. And I believe that it is what we need to focus on as a matter of sort of burning urgency. But it's not a single issue. It's a complex issue. And Lucas mentioned the need for systems thinking. And I think that that's definitely true, and something that I tried to bring to my day job. And so I mean, I think those are the main reasons. Obviously, I'm assuming those are the main reasons why everyone chooses this career, because it's sort of the most important pressing calling that I think we all face as humanity. So I think does that answer your basic question, Pallavi, to start?
Yeah, it definitely does. Thanks for also kind of giving a snapshot of what you do in your day to day, and that's very interesting to hear kind of the gamut of stuff that you work on, from procurement to regulations, like very true to the existential threat. So I'm sure a lot of us feel the urgency of it all and want to play a part in solving it. Okay, so thanks, Stephanie. Why don't we invite Mesha? How about you? Tell us about what your job entails, and also why did you start doing what you do? You're on mute.
Thanks for catching that. Thanks for inviting me to the panel. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody. So I'm the head of grow operations at Fieldless Farms. So our facility is actually located in Cornwall. We are kind of in the Ottawa region, but just a little south. So here I kind of oversee the just kind of day in, day out operations of the production of our lettuce varieties that we have. So my main job here is really making sure that the system is operating on the day-to-day basis. And I work with a team here to basically run it on such a commercial scale. So there's lots of little key things that kind of come into play with that, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. But I guess the reason why I got into sustainability is growing up in the Cornwall area, we are very close to the St. Lawrence River. And for myself, I found a calling to the water really is what it was. I've always had a strong interest in water quality management. And when I started going to school, my eyes were actually set on doing water treatment. And it just kind of evolved into where I am today. And I've been doing indoor ag now for 8 years. Absolutely love it. And I'm happy to share more about that. But the sustainability of it, I think, as a young kid, I was in Girl Guides. My parents tried to get me out into the community that way. And we did, water cleanups and stuff, trying to protect the water. So I think that I had that natural curiosity to understand what was going on and why these things seemed to be happening. Shoreline cleanups were a big part of my college kind of career too. So it all ties back to the water for me. And I think this was a very natural lead into my hydroponic career. So I'm happy to touch on that more, but that's really how I got started.
Thanks. That's a very interesting connection between water quality and then hydroponics. And definitely, I'm sure your systems lead to no runoffs and things, those kind of traditional farming challenges that lead to the water quality degradation in a lot of our water bodies. So that's a very interesting connection. And, so you constantly hear about this agriculture, water, and energy nexus. And it's very much kind of, you're connecting those two kind of what people would think would be disparate areas. So yeah, that's so exciting and interesting to hear. So thanks for that, Mesha. So now let's move on to Ted. So Ted, we're very excited to hear from you as a successful entrepreneur in sustainability. So please tell us a bit more about what you do and how your interest in sustainability and how you started a career in it.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. Unlike Stephanie, you can see all my gray hair very, very easily. I spent a lot of time in sustainability, but the career was not planned. It just happened. My background is in the military. I was in the infantry, carried rifles up mountains for the longest time. Left the military, and this was in India. Joined the UN, and I worked in humanitarian relief operations, natural disaster operations for close to 3 years, helping set up an agency called the UN's Joint Logistics Center. It took the UN close to about 60 years to realize that things weren't coordinated in all these disaster zones and billions of dollars was being destroyed or wasted. So I spent time doing that. But in this entire journey, I've spent time in the Himalayas. I've spent time in places that have been destroyed, essentially by humankind. We are well beyond the tipping point. It's not about avoidance anymore. It's about mitigation, and maybe not even that. It's about adaptation from here on. Places like Maldives are going to be submerged in the next 40 years, even if we go carbon neutral today. People in that island nation are looking at buying land in Australia, in Africa, other places. You go to places like Darfur, desertification is happening at a rapid pace. Pallavi and Karthik, you're probably, closer to India. When you go back home, you find that the watersheds are gone, right? You have to dig 200, 300 meters to get water into your agricultural field. So that's reality not today, it was here 20, 30 years ago. It's just of late that it's come up front and center, because of a lot of, I guess, media focus, social media that wasn't there 25 years ago. It allows for information to move around. So that's sort of been my sort of drivers at the back of my mind. My journey has been different. It went from military to the UN to business studies in Canada to working in the tech industry. And at some point along that line, I started to look at, what it is that really matters to me and what are my skill sets. Clearly, it was at the intersection of what I'd learned working in startups and learning about how to build software technologies, and the need to provide tools to companies, to organizations, so that they could, essentially move the needle in the right direction when it came to their own operations, their own impacts. So that essentially led me to where I am today. So my career in sustainability went from consulting. After I left my pure market/product strategy job with a tech company, I ended up working in a consulting firm focused on green technologies. I helped them set up that consulting practice, helping data centers go green. They were all the rage around 2007, 2008. And then about 2014, I started writing up a software product. And that's essentially what became FigBytes. And that's what I do today is I head up that company. It's a software company that builds technologies to track operational data, convert it into environmental, social, and governance impacts, and then connect those data and those results to analytics and performance management, but also to that missing part. How do we take those impacts and connect it with the strategy and the vision and the purpose of an organization? We believe everything needs to be driven from there. And that's what we are trying to solve, with our technologies. So in a nutshell, that's what I do today is head up that company, look after its operations, administration. I'm also involved in product management and other functions in that company. But the journey of getting me here is very varied.
Yeah, that's certainly, you've had such varied experiences, and it's very interesting to see how, that's kind of progressed to where you are today, and various kind of opportunities along the way. So, definitely so interesting to hear that all three of you have these different jobs and different pathways of how you kind of arrived there. So that's, you guys have all touched upon it a bit about how you kind of in your current roles, but that was going to be my second question. And I think Stefanie, why don't we start with you again, and you can tell us a bit more about kind of your educational background, any specific jobs that that you've done over the last 15 years that you think has really kind of shaped your career forward, and any other certifications that you might have taken on this path.
Sure. I mean, I can talk about this journey forever. I mean, if you've got like 20 years, I'll tell you all of the steps, but I'll try to break it down so it's a little less dense. But so my undergrad was Peace and Conflict Studies at U of T. I think as a general message, what I would say is, depending on your career, but if you're still students, or I'm not sure who's in the audience exactly, but it was important to try to bridge that academic professional barrier as much as possible. So if there's opportunities for work study, if there's internships, if there's any of those sorts of postings on your university like job board, I really encourage you to pay attention to those, because I don't think in Canada do a really good job of transitioning people from academia to professional life. But so my undergrad was Peace and Conflict Studies at U of T, and then I decided to defer my master's there to try to do something else. And I was actually answering phones at a law firm when I applied to an internship in DC, which I was successful with at the Woodrow Wilson Center for International Scholars. And from there, I applied to the London School of Economics, and I did a master's in environment and development at the LSE. I was really thrilled that they accepted me. It was an honor to be accepted. It was an exciting program. And then from there, I had no money. I was broke and happy. I was brappy. I'm just made that word up right now. And that's fine. I mean, I was looking for work. I had no money. I was looking for work. I was in my parents' basement. And I did that for about 6 months. I was looking for work and finally got a temp job with the government. And I also had an offer with an NGO. And I decided to go with the government because I thought that the government would be a better employer. And I've had friends who have gone into the NGO sector, and I think it's also a very worthwhile journey. But I was happy that I chose the government, and this is not a, work for the government spiel. It's just the government has been a very flexible employer for me in my career. I've worked in lots of different departments. I started at Environment Canada. I worked at TBS. I worked at PCO. I worked at NRCan. Worked at ISED most recently, something called the Policy Research Initiative, which became Policy Horizons Canada. I also, they were just a very flexible employer. So I wanted at one point to take a couple months off and do this cycling tour with a group called Otesha. I don't know if anyone knows about Otesha. They don't exist anymore, but it was an organization that performed plays to young people through like cycle tours and about how you could make a difference through your own lifestyle choices. And so they were very flexible with me and allowed me to take that time off through an income averaging. And then I applied to do a Fulbright, which I did on sustainable consumption and production in North America at the EPA, at the US EPA, and at the World Watch Institute as well. And then, yeah, and I still work in that sort of subject matter area around sort of circular economy and industrial strategy and footprint, ecological footprint concepts. So yeah, so those have been sort of the main steps in the journey in the different departments I've worked in, mostly federally, and then in the States as well. And I mean, I think what I would say is, yeah, try to watch that academic professional interface, but then also try to use your voice and have as much intention as you can around the moves that you make in your career so that they're building on what you want to contribute to. I think it's easy to try to move up in a hierarchy without having a lot of intention about the content. And so I think that would just be a word of caution, is to try not to do that if you really care about the material. So yeah, that's sort of it in a nutshell. Lots of different steps.
Yeah, that's some great advice there, and definitely things that people can learn from. And I'm sure we have folks in the audience who are interested in joining the government, so that's all very useful to them and all those who are listening. Mesha, why don't we move on to you? So we heard a bit about your interest in water, but tell us a bit more about some of your educational and then experiences and how that's kind of helped you to your current role.
For sure. So I kind of came from some humble beginnings, I'd like to say. When I decided to return to do my environmental technician course at St. Lawrence College in Cornwall, I was actually a single mom at the time, recently out of an abusive relationship, and I was struggling renting from a friend at the time. And I was working as a shipping and receiving team lead at Calypso Water Park, just to the east of Ottawa. And I was in a panic. I was like, oh my gosh, summer's coming to an end. My job's gonna go. What am I gonna do? And I worked myself up into a frenzy. And the Thursday before the semester started, I applied and was accepted Friday and started class on Tuesday. So it was a really rushed beginning, but I have to agree with Stefanie that like if there's opportunities through your programs to even just volunteer, they make the biggest difference. For me, my career path just organically developed, and I kind of had to follow it like the wind, really, because even though I went to do environmental technician and I went to do the water treatment course to get my license for water treatment, I ended up through my extracurriculars at the school made the connections that led me to indoor ag. So they kind of just all popped out of nowhere. It was through conversations with people explaining that, I just found this and it's absolutely amazing and I would love a dream job in this. And it took that, and someone was like, well, I know of a position. But had I not been, reaching outward with this desire, this want to further my impact in this field, I would have never developed those connections to get me where I wanted to be. So even though the technical knowledge is great, like you still have to be able to work with people. You have to be able to, network and connect. And sometimes, professional groups just like this are really good at building those connections. Just to speak for indoor ag, a lot of local food communities are a great way to learn, to meet some professionals that are also, currently working in this field. So I think that kind of in a roundabout way, prior to my environmental technician course, I did do a graphic design course in 2008, but it's really kind of didn't quite lead into the sustainability as much as the e-tech stuff did. But there was a lot of cool stuff that we did in the program, resurrecting a student initiative called the Green Team, just to encourage more sustainability projects on campus. And we started doing an annual e-waste project. And it has continued since actually I left the program in 2015. So they've done it annually since. The year that we had run the program, or run the project, there was 6.28 tons of electronic waste we were able to collect in a period of 3 months. Sorry, there was like 6 main core people at the time that were able to do this. So it was kind of a great event to introduce us into what we could do as 6 individuals. Like 6.28 tons isn't too much on a big scale, but it was still something. So it was really empowering to us, kind of getting into that, like get our feet wet and get a feel for it, and like, yeah, we could do this, right? So that was kind of a fun thing that developed out of building those connections. So that would be the one thing I'd recommend for sure.
Yeah, those are some, great examples of how kind of, just not having a focus on your own coursework could lead to some serendipitous opportunities and, community building around important topics such as e-waste and sustainability. So thanks for those examples, Mesha. Very useful. So now coming back to you, Ted, we heard from you about your journey, from being in the military to the UN, then in IT in Canada already. However, I would really like to understand more from you how your experiences in Canada kind of led to your current, starting your own company, and also in your entrepreneurship journey specifically, if you had, some key, maybe events or programs or, even kind of funding organizations that might have been useful for you to set up Fig Bites.
Great questions and a lot in there. Coming back to the education question that you had earlier, my background is in economics. I did my bachelor's in economics, and I believe for the longest time that, and this was, in the early 90s, that I believe that, there needs to be a connection between environmental management and finance at some point. Talking about career opportunities, and I suppose there's a lot of younger folks on this call looking for those next opportunities. A lot of things have got defined since then, and I'll come back to that later, possibly, in some other question. But my journey in Canada was again something that happened by because of destiny, let's put it that way. So one of my friends who was with me on a UN mission in Sierra Leone, we were quartered together with the Princess Patricia's Light Infantry. So I made some good friends with Canadians there. And at one point, when I was working with the UN, my wife gave me the ultimatum, basically. I was in all God-forsaken places. I had a small kid back in India. And she said, why don't you settle down? I said, well, what do I do? 3rd generation military guy who's now working with the UN, where do I go and settle down? So I said, let's go and do some further studies in North America. And I had no idea what I wanted to study. So I applied for a number of different courses, and I got accepted in some business courses, some good business schools. I couldn't afford the US, and my friend in Canada said, why don't you give Canada a shot? So I applied to the Ivy Business School at Western, got accepted, and that's how I ended up there. That's how I came to Canada. We spent 2 years here, and by the end of those 2 years, we had sort of decided this is where we wanted to bring up our family. My friend had started a company here in Ottawa. He offered me my first job. I ended up working with a technology startup. I knew nothing about technology. My entire aim of doing the business studies was to spend 2 years and possibly go back to the UN. In any case, I ended up in Ottawa working with him, worked with him very closely in product strategy, helping design products. That company got sold to a Silicon Valley company, which got sold to Autonomy. Autonomy ended up getting sold to Hewlett Packard, all within 4 years. So I went from working with a very, very small company to now working with HP. And the journey was tremendous. What I learned about how you build products, how you design products, how big companies work, what are the dynamics within corporations, all has helped sort of culminate into the journey of FigBytes. So that was my first experience in Canada. At that point, I had not decided that I wanted to, build a company in sustainability. I went from that company to, as I'd mentioned, doing, boutique consulting in market strategy with a company called Random Group. When I was with them, I helped them set up the green technologies consulting practice. This was all about data centers becoming green, huge consumers of energy. How do you, take Google's data centers and make them more efficient than they already were? That was sort of the seed. But at one point, if you remember, the carbon credit markets were really exploding, and this was around 2007, 2008, and that really got me thinking, how can you buy and sell hot air? If you look at finance, and going back to my business degree and economics degree, with a financial asset, you hold it, you buy something and you hold it, and then you sell it for a profit. With carbon credits, you bought these carbon credits and they essentially expired when you use them. So that was the seed for FigBytes. We designed a product for carbon project management, the VERs, the CDMs, those sort of mechanisms. And very soon we realized that there wasn't really an opportunity for technology there. There was a whole lot of glut of these credits. No one was buying those credits, and something was amiss. And it was clear that organizations did not have a way to figure out their sustainability impacts. So that's how the sort of underlying idea of FigBytes crystallized. And I would say the journey was, again, not very structured. It went from one experience to another. But at every point, the mind was open to learning new things and then sort of applying them to where the passion was. And the passion always was to do something that would help move the needle in the right direction. I would, tell folks on the call today, things are far more structured. If you're a financial professional and you want to get into impact investing, that's a whole new area opening up. There's billions of dollars now tied to ESG criteria. So you can, essentially not even have a sustainability education, come up, studying finance, but if you are passionate about something, you can make those moves. There's just a ton of opportunities cropping up these days. So hopefully in a roundabout way, that does address your question.
Yeah, definitely. And there's some good points about kind of, moving into impact investing from finance, and you kind of end up working on these key sustainability issues essentially without really needing to go through an environmental or sustainability studies course. And that makes, a lot of sense because sustainability is such a varied field with so many kind of different aspects to it, that there couldn't be really one path for being a professional in it. So also kind of excited to hear how each of you kind of did it with various different paths. And when I kind of think of it, I don't see it, like this one big road that everybody has to follow to this one destination, but a lot of side roads leading to essentially a big, area that's sustainable. So thanks for, talking about that and a wealth of kind of, your knowledge from your experiences. I have a few more questions, but we're also kind of low on time, and I wanted to start including some audience questions. But before we go to audience questions, I'll ask one more question that I have prepared, which is, what do you see as some challenges and opportunities for professionals who are younger and who are trying to get into the sector right now, or have just joined the sector and are trying to move into more mid-level roles? So Stefanie, why don't I start with you again, and like to hear from you about the opportunities and challenges that you see.
Sure. So when I started, sustainability was not something that everyone really cared about. And my mission at the time was, how do I bring sustainability that I believe so passionately about to sort of the center of government? And a lot of my intention and direction was about, trying to do that. But now I think it's so ubiquitous, like people everywhere understand. I think now it's so prominent in the media and everywhere how important sustainability is, that it's sort of presents a different set of challenges, because it's not necessarily, you're not going to be the only person that wants to talk about it. Like, I think a lot of people are going to have views and opinions, and obviously it's not sort of a discrete sector, it's found in all sectors. And so if you are interested in speaking about it and knowing about it, I think you have to try to, and this I'm going to hopefully talk at the end, probably with your sort of last 2 points. But I think because it's everywhere, you can't be an expert in everything. And so it's important to sort of pick where you want to apply your sustainability concerns. So for me, it's been really in sort of the regulations and procurement file areas that I've wanted to focus on. But for other people, you can focus on any other kind of domain, whether it's IT or ag, like the other panelists, or, if it's real property or, fleet management, or, any of these kinds of like sub areas. So I guess to me, it would be, if I was starting now, I think I would probably want to pick an area and then be able to know the lingo really effectively, to be able to technically understand like the substance of the topic, and then apply the sustainability lens as well to that. So, yeah.
Pallavi, I think you're on mute.
Thanks, sorry. I keep putting myself on mute so there's no other in noise, but then that happens. I was saying that that's, I think we will hear this over and over in this panel tonight, is that it's not just one way, and it's, you don't have to kind of have followed this one path to be a sustainability professional, and applying the sustainability lens into any other, expertise or area of expertise that you have will be crucial going forward. Mesha, what about you? What do you see as some opportunities and challenges for folks who are looking to build their career in sustainability?
For sure. I mean, I can really only kind of touch on the indoor ag part of it.
Yeah.
But I think that with the sustainability lens, looking at basically the food chain and everything that it encompasses between farm and table, there's lots of different jobs that you could see yourself in. Procurement, packaging, harvesting, packaging, marketing, sales, research, technology development. These are all kind of advancing fields within this sector, because we're looking and combining all of these different facets together in a more efficient way. I think any job that you decide to to take on, if you put that sustainability lens on, you can still make an impact even in the job that you're doing and still move yourself towards a more sustainability conscientious position. You know, even if you're just in your workplace and, you know, you become someone who's passionate about waste management, that falls under the sustainability. That was actually something that led me into the indoor ag, was an interest in waste management. I even did a work placement at an engineered landfill. And just being able to see the byproducts be recaptured and reused, it's empowering. So even on a small scale, you know, don't be afraid to just make that little investment to see the return that comes back. There's a direct correlation there. So the effort that you put in, you will see it come back out. And you tend to kind of get these individuals around you as you build this that are more motivated on making bigger changes. So you get kind of collectively together as a group. And I think that, you know, again, like I mentioned before, professional groups like this, you know, you get those like-minded individuals together, and so you reach out and tackle more of these like-minded opportunities, and you find those organic things that lead you into those positions that you want, right? So it's important, it really is.
Thanks. Yeah, agree with you on all your points. And that's something I have noticed as well. The community that you can build is also very important. Now coming over to
You gone on mute, Pallavi?
I did that again, sorry. What are some opportunities and challenges that you see for you know, younger professionals who are interested in the environmental sustainability sectors and interested in developing a career given current situations?
In terms of opportunity, I see unlimited opportunity from here on. You know, the world is going through a tremendous shift. You know, people understand this, as you know, Stefanie and Mesha said. There's so much opportunity now. Sustainability is broad, as we all know. There's a ton of different moving parts. I guess the challenge now is to pick your battle, essentially. You know, back in the day, we had to sort of create our own path, talking to people, creating things like I did when I was at the consulting firm, you know, setting up a new practice. Those days are gone. You know, every company that we talk to, and we talk to multiple companies on a daily basis, you know, sustainability functions that were embedded in, say, health and safety earlier, or in the finance function when things started out. You have teams forming, you have teams expanding. You know, 5 years ago, even the biggest companies in the world had probably 3 or 4 people on their sustainability teams. Now those teams are growing. Sustainability is being embedded in all functions of an organization, you know, from product design to logistics to manufacturing to, you know, even corporate strategy. You know, it's an essential part of it. I talked about finance earlier. And then you have things outside of the corporate sector, right? The NGO sector, government sector, policies, you know, all those things have created a wealth of opportunities out there. And I think we are at the beginning. This is the tip of the iceberg. If I look out another 10 years or 20 years, where, you know, a lot of young folks are going to be at the peak of their careers, I don't think you'll be able to survive as an organization if you don't take sustainability seriously, and if it's not already part of your DNA. You know, companies that aren't doing that today are going to be dinosaurs. They're going to die out like some of the big ones, you know, that died out 10, 15 years ago when the technology revolution happened. The same thing is going to happen with a ton of organizations. And everyone who's looking for jobs now is probably really well positioned. I envy them, because if this was happening 15 years ago, you know, things would probably have been different. It would have been far easier to make a living to start with. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to be getting those dollars in to keep the home fires burning. You know, that has changed. You know, you're looking at structured, well-organized career paths now, education that will give you the wherewithal to approach those different you know, opportunities that you have. So I see a lot of opportunity, and I honestly don't see challenges going ahead other than being able to pick your battle, focus on something, become an expert. You know, the sustainability space is a mile wide, and you can really just go an inch deep and not achieve much. So I would suggest, you know, going a mile deep, pick something, study a lot, learn about it, you know, rendezvous with people, reach out to people who can get you started in that area. If that be policy, reach out to people who are already doing that. If you are interested in technology and you want to get into clean tech, there's a different path there. If you like software, reach out to people like me. So there's just a ton of opportunity. The challenge is at the end of the person who's trying to find that opportunity, I would guess. Don't limit yourself.
Yeah, that definitely you've touched upon the very crucial point that going a mile deep, and I think that's very crucial for a lot of folks to understand. And I think what the other panelists also touched upon is the importance of choosing a path, and then because sustainability is such a wide field, so that definitely very important for people who are really interested to understand. I want to go into some audience questions because I have a few, and we don't have a whole bunch of time. So actually, the first question, Ted, and you touched upon it a little. So for the tech industry, is trying to streamline ESG. So from that perspective, are hard skills like business analysis more important than sustainability education, or would you need both?
I think you would need a little bit of both. While business skills can be learned, as can ESG skills, I think it will boil down to how you start your journey within a corporate setup. Sustainability teams do now hire straight from universities, so there's an opportunity to just get straight out of university and get embedded in those functions. Other examples could be starting off in, say, operations or finance, and then working your way towards the ESG function within an organization. What I have found is these functions are sometimes embedded in other functions of a company. EHS, which was environmental health and safety, which was focused on compliance. In some companies, it's become EHS and S, which is sort of an add-on. So, you can start there as well. You can get into a admin or a finance department and start looking at their ESG reporting and things like the TCFD reporting that companies are starting to really embed into their overall framework reporting requirements now. So there's different paths there, and it's not specific just to a technology company. I would go cross vertical and say, every company in every vertical out there needs to embed sustainability in everything they do. That might take a while, but what has clearly been structured is a need to put a process around at least the frameworks that they have signed up to. So they need resources to come in, help them gather that data, convert it into sustainability impacts, and then file those reports. Those are probably the low-hanging fruit if someone is looking for a career with enterprises. I would suggest reach out to teams who are involved in ESG reporting. Those are the guys to sort of connect with, look for those initial internships, and build your career from there on.
Thanks, Ted. For the next, one of the other questions, which is also on the kind of similar path, is whether a master's of sustainability is better suited for business-oriented roles in sustainability, or a master's in business. And I think it's open to everybody on the panel, whoever wants to take the question, a weighing of which you think might be more relevant for business-oriented sustainability roles.
I think either. You now have MBAs with a lot of electives focused around sustainability. Masters of Sustainability gives you a deeper understanding of that topic. And I would think companies would hire people with sort of both backgrounds. We personally got masters in sustainability and masters in environmental science graduates working with us. So that certainly has worked for us. I think an understanding of the domain really helps. I mean, technology can be learned, systems can be learned, processes can be learned within organizations, but domain expertise takes a long time. So people who are coming in with a deeper understanding of subject matter will always, have a little bit of a step up as compared to just a generic graduate from an business degree program, as an example.
Okay. Anybody else on the panel that might want to opine on that? No. Okay. So the next question is, so as a new graduate of an environmental and forestry program, this person is currently looking to switch career paths and move more towards conservation and environmental sustainability. Are there any suggestions of good organizations that would be a great place to start a new career?
In my environmental technician program, we worked very closely with conservation authorities. There's a couple local, there's one just outside of Finch, and of course I'm drawing a blank as to the name, but there's the Raisin River Conservation Authority as well, which is close to the Cornwall area. So I mean, there's a number of watersheds that are being monitored, and efforts are being put towards bringing the public to these spaces to broaden their knowledge of these spaces. So I think that those definitely hold some potential for people looking to get into the conservation side of it.
Okay.
Yeah, I just would recommend, I mean, when I was looking to change and to get a job, you just have to send out as many CVs as you humanly possibly can. You just have to hustle as much as possible. It's a full-time job. To look for a job is a full-time job. And so, Google is your friend. Find organizations that are related to what you are interested in, and just, do a blanket CV bomb. And, information interviews is sort of the next step. If you're really interested in the organization, target someone specifically, ask them for coffee, see if they would be willing to share some time with you. But yeah, I mean, for forestry specifically, the conservation authorities make sense, but there's a ton of different organizations and companies that work in forestry. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks. So one of the other questions is, if you're not under 30 and you can't really do an internship, have a related degree and some international experience in sustainability, how would you find and open that early mid-level role in Canada?
Reach out to people.
Okay.
It is possibly the only way to short circuit, spending a lot of hours sending out resumes, which is foundational. You can't escape that. It's a process, as Stefanie says, and it starts with getting your resume in order, making sure you get a solid cover letter, start sending that out. If you think you're going to send out 50, be prepared to send out 5,000 before you start getting some real quality people reaching back. But there's no shortcut to networking, especially in a field that's evolving so quickly as sustainability. And given the world we live in today, the COVID world, it's all about being virtual. Don't limit yourself to Ottawa. There are jobs around the world, and you can do those from here, right? We've just hired someone in a sales position who's out in Vancouver. It's immaterial where you're based these days. As long as work can be done over the internet, there's an opportunity for you, and that suddenly opens up your scope of or the field from Ottawa to really anywhere around the world. And there's a ton of jobs coming up. They're cropping up daily. I follow some of those on LinkedIn. There's a number of people reaching out to me. I'm connecting with them. But I can tell you, people are open to speaking. Talk about a coffee. Well, if you can't have in-person coffee, have a virtual coffee. Reach out to the person, Zoom the person, get onto a video call like this. the process doesn't change. The way you are approaching it possibly is going to change because of COVID. But couple that with the fact that the last 3 months in sustainability, and again, I'm talking enterprise because that's where my experience is, we've turned a corner. The amount of calls that we are getting at FigBites is possibly more than any number that we've got before COVID. Sustainability has become important because the rebuilding post-COVID is going to be tied to sustainability plans. And this is not just the government money that's been given out that is asking for sustainability plans to be drawn up. Companies that were better prepared for the pandemic and have handled it better are companies that had very strong ESG policies and systems in place. And this is backed by statistics. If you also look at the amount of money that's been invested in companies and tied to ESG criteria, for the longest time from 2013 to 2019, it was about $6 billion a year. In 2019, it jumped to about 21 billion. In the first 6 months, when we were at the peak of COVID, that's crossed $71 billion. And that's being driven by things like more legislations, stock exchanges asking for ESG risk reports to be submitted, institutional investors asking their companies to file those reports. There's a fundamental shift happening all around. So reach out to those guys who are involved in all this. LinkedIn is a great place to start. I remember when I was trying to reach out and connect to people 5 years ago, it was difficult to find a lot of folks with sustainability in their titles. That's completely changed. There's tens of thousands of people out there. So I would suggest, use the internet, as Stefanie says. Google is the guru here. Follow the lead.
I have one thing to add to what Ted was saying too. In my program, we did an exercise called a career interview that might be useful to some new professionals trying to get into a new career role. If you reach out to someone who currently holds a role in the job you're interested, you can reach out to them, and a lot of the time, you explain why you're, trying to build this connection with them, and they'll be really open to sharing experiences with you and helping, possibly give you pointers on getting into that field. And it's a great exercise to try because it also gives you some insight as to what the career might be. When I did my work placement, I had this one concept of like what it was going to be, and then I actually got there and it was completely different. So I realized really quickly it wasn't what I wanted to do. And so this exercise of a career interview would allow you to try out these little jobs and see, like, is this for me? Do I get enough variety in my day-to-day? Am I going to be happy doing this stuff? So, building those connections via LinkedIn and having those virtual coffees are a great way to hold, these career interviews in this COVID situation right now, while still looking to further your career.
Thanks, Mesha. Yeah, definitely. Actually, that is one of the questions that was just asked. And I think both Ted, Mesha and Stefanie, all three of you kind of touched on it, is, tips for networking in a COVID and a post-COVID world. And, it's virtual. So Ted pointed out LinkedIn is a great avenue. Do any of you have any other suggestions for websites that might be useful for this, for reaching out to professionals in sustainability? I think you guys can mention it in the chat, and so that everybody can see it. We are kind of tight on time, and we are actually at 7:30. So I won't take too much of the panelists' time anymore. I'm really sorry for some of the questions that we couldn't answer right now, but we'll try to follow up with you and get those answered, over emails later. So before we kind of end this, I would like to thank all the panelists for some great insights. But before we end this, I'd like everybody to provide 2 tips for folks who are currently job searching, looking to be in environmental. So what that they can take forward with them. Why don't we reverse the order this time, and I'll start with Ted.
Wow, 2 tips. I thought I gave a lot of tips, but I'll probably just repeat them. Network. There's no shortcut to it. The more time you spend on it, the better your results. Karthik, who is on this call today, He's with FigBytes because he's a master networker. So there's an example right there. So do that. The second tip would be to pick your battle. I'll go back to what I said. Choose an area, focus on it, and find the people who are associated with it, and then go back to number one, network with them, and open up those doors.
Thanks, Ted. Yeah, that's a good summation. Mesha, how about you? 2 tips.
Don't be afraid to take a position that might be lower than what you're hoping for. There's always potential to go up. So even if it's in the field that you want, but it's not exactly where you want, don't be deterred. At least get in and give it a try, because you might meet the people that you need to get the job that you want. And join more groups. That's all I can say really is you build so many important connections that will take you to amazing places in your life, and you close those out to begin with. You're never going to know where you were supposed to be.
Thanks. And Stefanie.
Sure, it's really 2 parts. The first part is to be humble. Perhaps this is particular to government, but in my experience, if you work in sustainability, you're often applying a lens to someone else's expertise. So to get that lens across, you really need to be cognizant that you don't know everything, and that you're approaching your work with humility as you're trying to engage with others, as you're trying to achieve this sustainability transformation. And then the second part is to really pick a focus. Ted mentioned it as well. You have to pick that focus area where you're going to apply your sustainability passions, and go with what speaks to you. Like, say you like interior design. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in the design world. If it's real property, if it's maybe you love cars. There's tons and tons of electric vehicles and a huge transformation happening in that space. Like, go with what speaks to you and what you're passionate about, and pick that focus and be humble. Those are my 2 tips.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much. We have some great tips, and it'd be very interesting that I'll get different ones. I'll compile them and I'll send it to all our participants who've joined today. So before we leave, Lucas would like to say a few more words. And I also wanted to actually, maybe Lucas is going to say this, but tell people who are the participants that in our series on careers in sustainability, we will do a resume workshop as well as a networking workshop. So we can discuss these more in those workshops for those who are interested in signing up for the series or already have, and kind of delve deeper into these topics. Okay, Lucas, over to you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. So thank you to all the panelists. I'm just going to warn all of the attendees right now. We would love to take a little screenshot of everybody who's attended the event. So in about a minute, I'm going to ask you to turn on your webcam. If you need a second to prepare, I'll just give you that forewarning. Otherwise, I'll let you know and you can leave the meeting before that. So yeah, thank you so much, really, everybody, for the panel. It was incredibly insightful. And I'm sure very valuable advice to people who are on that career hunt, who are looking to build their careers and get out there in front of everybody. To continue this journey, like Pallavi said, this is part of a series. So feel free to look into that series and see whether those next events will interest you. We're selling, there's a series pass, so you can get all the tickets in one go, or you can do them one event at a time as you're interested. The next one will be on October 20th, and it's going to be from the other side of the table. We'll be hearing the recruiter perspective. People are actually in hiring positions. What are they looking for? How can you best position yourself for success? So keep your eye. We'll be launching that one very soon. Thank you, Stefanie, Misha, Ted, and especially Stefanie for doing this on your birthday. That's real commitment. But really, thank you all so much for doing this. Pallavi for excellent moderation. It was a really fantastic panel. To the whole CEP Ottawa team for putting this together and putting the work into it. And of course, everybody in the audience for joining us, taking the initiative in your careers and making a contribution to this incredibly important work. It's really fantastic to see so much interest. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a fantastic night. We'll see you next time.